Good morning, everyone. I am Daphne Osenia Paez, and I welcome you to the second day of 2024 Post-SONA discussions. We hope that everyone is safe and well in their homes. It has been raining relentlessly due to Typhoon Karina and Habagat, but rest assured that all government agencies involved in response and rescue, led by the President, are closely monitoring the situation nationwide. And that is why some of our panelists for today will be joining us via Zoom. Isinusulong sa bagong Pilipinas ang dekalidad na edukasyong kayang sumasabay sa mga hamon ng makabagong panahon. Pinapahalagahan din ng bagong Pilipinas ang kapakanan ng bawat manggagawang Pilipino saan man sila sa mundo. Kasama natin ngayong umaga ang mga panelists ng Education and Workers' Welfare Development Cluster who will give us more details about their projects to enhance the education system and ensure the workers' welfare and employment opportunities. So with us this morning are Department of Education Secretary Juan Edgardo Sunny Angara.
Recording in progress. Recording stopped.
Department of Labor and Employment Secretary Bienvenido Laguesma.
Magandang ngunit maulang umaga sa lahat.
Department of Migrant Workers Secretary Hans Kaktak via Zoom. And also via Zoom, Commission on Higher Education Chairperson Prospero de Vera III. Also via Zoom, Technical Education and Skills Development Authority Deputy General Rosana Urdaneta.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen.
At this point, we will give our panelists time to expound on what the President had said in his State of the Nation address. And let's begin with education. He stated, "Ito ngayon ang magiging hamon sa ating bagong kalihim, ang tiyakin ang pagbangon at pagtaas ng kalidad ng edukasyon sa bansa sa lalong madaling panahon." Secretary Angara, this is my chance to congratulate you on your appointment. Hello, sir, and I look forward to having you.
Good morning, Daphne.
Hi.
Good morning to all our viewers and our fellow secretaries, department secretaries.
Thank you, sir. Under your new leadership as the new DepEd Secretary, how do you plan to improve the quality of education among the Filipino youth, most especially that we face new challenges in learning brought about by the modern world?
Well, obviously this is a huge challenge, Daphne, but the President knows that it will take time, but we need to plant seeds for the long term as well as try to have some wins in the short term. So number one, the President said, let us take care of our teachers. So he has, I believe, approved some form, in principle at least, the career progression of our teachers, because that has been the long time complaint of our teachers, that it takes very long for them to get promoted. And then we're also trying to activate the Teacher Education Council. This is a body created under a law about which Congress passed around 2 years ago, which is meant to train our teachers to ensure up-to-date quality and in the methods of teaching, that teachers are really improving and keeping up. And of course, the President also mentioned the need to improve our scores in local and international tests. And so one of our recommendations is that we put up a task force for the PISA exams specifically, because we need to modify local conditions to be able to perform better in these exams, as well as to change our pedagogy or the way we teach to be able to approximate a more problem-solving approach. The President mentioned developing critical thinkers, so it's really the ability to make use of significant concepts going forward. And of course, the President also mentioned that we need to harness new technologies. So we need our students to be technologically savvy, and at the same time, across the Philippines, we need to provide better inputs for our students.
Thank you. Very interesting, and of course, still on the welfare of our teachers, President Marcos also stated, of equal significance, we have allocated funds to finally implement the expanded career progression system for our public school teachers, which shall promote professional development and career advancement within their ranks. This expanded system lays out 2 career paths for our teachers to pursue: teaching and the school administration tracks, each of which shall have ample career growth opportunities. With this system in place, we will accelerate the career growth of teachers. Sa sistemang ito, wala na sigurong public school teacher ang magre-retire ng Teacher 1 lamang. Now, that being said, Secretary Angara, what are your plans in ensuring the steady implementation of the expanded career progression system for our public school teachers?
Well, we're finalizing that document along with the 3 other agencies, Daphne. These are aside from the Department of Education, the Professional Regulatory Commission, the Department of Budget and Management, and the Commission on Higher Education to have that career progression for our teachers. At yan yung sinasabi nila na kaya minsan, sometimes our teachers get pirated for better opportunities because it takes some time for them to be promoted. So this one gives them something to look forward to. A career track, as you mentioned, there's a school track, meaning teaching track, and there's also a administrative track for those who are more suited or would wish to become administrators within our school system. But definitely, it is something which will encourage and incentivize our teachers and really. We really expect improved performance because of these innovations and developments which the President has approved.
Thank you, Secretary Angara. Please stay with us. We'll be back with you shortly. For now, let's move on to Labor. Secretary Laguesma, parang tayong may one-on-one dito. Ano? This is the first time it's happened in Post-SONA, but we adapt. Thank you, sir. Okay, so for Department of Labor and Employment, the President said, with tripartite consensus, minimum wage levels have been increased in various sectors in all regions, including the BARM, for workers in private establishments. Makapagdudulot ito ng ginhawa sa mahigit 4 na milyong mga kababayan natin at kanilang mga pamilya. Could you please share with us other programs, Secretary Laguesma, in response to this?
Maraming salamat, Daphne. Muli, pagbati ng isang maganda, bagamat maulang umaga sa lahat. Bukod doon sa nabanggit ng ating Pangulo, may kinalaman sa adjustment sa existing na minimum wage sa lahat ng mga rehiyon. Magbalik tanaw lang ako na mayroon pong binigay na direktiba ang ating Pangulo nung nakaraang araw ng paggawa. Binanggit niya na lahat ng mga regional tripartite wages and productivity boards ay dapat magsagawa ng timely review na papanahong pag-aaral doon po 60 days prior to the anniversary date of the existing wage level sa mga rehiyon. At yung nabanggit niya, last year, lahat ng rehiyon, pati na yung BARM, ay nagkaroon po ng pagpapalabas ng kanilang mga wage orders. At nabanggit din niya na consensus. Ibig sabihin, ang kinatawan ng mga manggagawa at namumuhunan at ng pamahalaan na bahagi ng Regional Tripartite Wages and Productivity Boards ay nagkasundo na ito ang angkop na halaga matapos nilang isaalang-alang ang iba-ibang mga factors na nakasaad sa batas. At itong Labor Day, sinabi nga niya na dapat magsagawa na at nagkaroon na nga ng mga pagsasaalang-alang. Nanguna ang ating National Capital Region, Regional Tripartite Wages and Productivity Boards at nagkaroon ng wage order na nagkaroon ng visa o effectivity noong nakaang July 17. Sumusunod na po ang ibang mga rehiyon batay po sa direktiba ng ating Pangulo at siguro mahalaga na bigyan ko ng diin ang tinatalakay at tinutukoy lang po ng mga regional tripartite wages and productivity boards ay may kinalaman sa umiiral na minimum wage level, entry level, floor level. Hindi po niya tinatalaka yung may mas mataas pa. Subalit bagamat nabanggit ng ating Pangulo na 4 million ang direkta o directly magbebenepisyo dito po sa mga adjustment na ginawa nung nakaraang taon, meron pong makikinabang pa na bahagi ng ating mga manggagawa na medyo maliit ng konti ang angat sa minimum wage at yun po ay kailangan na bigyan ng pagtugon nang hindi magkaroon ng tinatawag na wage distortion. So yun po yung direksyon at asahan po na susunod-sunod na po rin po ang mga ibang mga regional tripartite wages and productivity boards dun sa kanilang ginagawang proseso. Meron pang mga ibang programa na dapat na ginagawa ang Department of Labor and Employment complementary sa minimum wage adjustment. Siyempre, nandyan yung bahagi ng aming employment facilitation, pagpapalakas ng ating pong kakayahan na makapagbigay ng training, retraining, at saka yun pong paglilink sa merkado. At bahagi din yung madalas na isinasagawang job fairs na kung saan ay kabahagi o kapartner natin ang Public Employment Service Offices ng mga local government units at ang pinakamahalagang bahagi ng aming jobs fair, ang atin pong pribadong sektor, ang ating mga employers organization, ang mga businesses po natin na sila ang nagkakaloob ng mga available na trabaho na pwede pong mapunan sa mga jobs fair.
Thank you, sir. The President also proudly mentioned during his third State of the Nation address, our employment rate has increased 95.9%. We also saw a significant increase in high-quality jobs. Underemployment, too, has decreased from 11.7% in May of 2023 to 9.9% today, which is our lowest since 2005. Halos 2.5 milyong Pilipino ang naiangat natin mula sa kahirapan. Secretary Laguesma, what do these figures say about the work of the DOLE, and how do these numbers affect the lives of Filipinos?
Una siguro, bigyan ko ng diin na yun pong improvement, pagganda ng kalagayan sa ating employment level, malaking bahagi po niyan, contribution po ng pribadong sektor. Sila po kasi ang tunay na lumilikha ng hanap buhay o trabaho. At hindi lamang basta trabaho, quality jobs. Ang tungkulin po ng pamahalaan ay mag-provide o mag-create ng enabling environment conducive to investments para madagdagan pa ang bilang ng mga hanap buhay. Kaya malaki ang pasasalamat ng Department of Labor and Employment sa patuloy na kooperasyon, kolaborasyon ng pribadong sektor at sana magtuloy-tuloy ito dahil nais po naman din nating makita sa pamamagitan po ng kolaborasyon ng manggagawa, ng namumuhunan at ng pamahalaan, DOLE in particular, Daphne, will be able to really sustain the employment level at magtuloy-tuloy tayo makalika ng mas maraming hanap buhay at hindi lamang basta hanap buhay. Yung bang productive, remunerative, quality at sustainable na trabaho. Yan po yung balangkas din na paloob sa atin pong trabaho para sa Bayan Plan. Kung matatandaan natin, nung nakaraang taon, September 27 to be exact, nilagdaan ng ating Pangulong Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. yung Trabaho para sa Bayan Act. Meron na po yung implementing rules and regulations. At ang medyo nakapagbibigay talaga sa atin dito ng inspirasyon din at nakapagbibigay sigla, doon po sa nasabing batas, meron po dong nilikha na trabaho para sa bayan, interagency council. At nandun po yung konsepto ng whole of government at saka whole of society approach. Bakit po? Bukod po sa mga miyembro ng council na galing sa pamahalaan na pinangungunahan po ng ating NEDA, siyempre bahagi dyan ng Department of Labor and Employment, DTI, DOF, DBM, DILG at TESDA, ay meron pong kinatawan ang employers organization, workers organization, informal sector at saka marginalized or vulnerable sector. Ibig sabihin, yung pong plano na binilangkas, meron po diyang kontribusyon, may ambag, may inputs, itong mga sektor na ito. Hindi po ito isang dokumento na binilangkas lamang ng pamahalaan. Ang gusto pong makita ng ating Pangulo, talagang magkaroon ng pagkakaisa, pagtatagpo ng mga kaisipan, at makita po natin ang ating mga ginagawang plano, bahagi po ang ating mga gustong makita na mayangat ang buhay sa bagong Pilipinas.
Secretary Laguesma, in keeping with providing jobs and finding jobs, your department is also involved in creating better jobs for the Filipinos. Could you please share with us other programs of DOLE that would address the job skills mismatch?
Meron tayong, siyempre, kabahagi namin dyan. Bahagi ng ating talakayan, yung TESDA. Siguro dapat dagdagan niya yung sasabihin ng kalihim ng Department of Labor and Employment. Yung pong mismatch, ang sinasabi kasi natin dyan, very briefly, meron kahong available na skill pero hindi tumutugma dun sa available na trabaho. Meron din pong sitwasyon ng mismatch na meron pong skill na naririto sa isang rehiyon pero ang trabaho nasa kabilang region. So, geographical mismatch. Paano po ina-address yan? Una po na ginagawa, siyempre, sa bahagi po ng DOLE, mag-concentrate lang po ako dun sa mga programa ng DOLE, paghahanda sa mga mag-aaral, mga kabataan. Para nang sa ganon, magkaroon ng tinatawag na better managed school-to-work transition. Ano po yung mga programa? Meron po kaming programa on a special program for the employment of students. Kabahagi din po dyan ng pribadong sektor. Meron pong government internship program. At meron din pong job start na partner natin lagi ang pribadong sektor. Kaya kami po'y nagpapasalamat. Marami na po kaming napirmahan ng mga memorandum of agreement sa iba-ibang mga kumpanya at iba-ibang mga organisasyon na ang layunin, ihanda ang atin pong mga manggagawa o mga mag-aaral patungo po sa mga available na trabaho. At meron pa pong isa sigurong dapat na mabanggit. Paano po tinitignan yung skills or job mismatch? Meron na pong dalikha na National Coordinating Council for Philippine Qualification Framework. Ang nangunguna dyan ang DepEd, siyempre kasama ang DOLE, ang PRC, ang CHED at saka ang TESDA. Ang layunin niya, tignan yung mga pangangailangan ng ating mga existing na negosyo o kaya mga potential na investors para mahenda ang ating workforce. At sa bahagi naman po ng kakasanayan, meron din tayong tinatawag na Philippine Skills Framework. Nangunguna naman dyan ang DTI at always nakakasama ang DOLE kasi tuwing mayroong pagsasanay, dapat nakalink yan sa mga available na trabaho. At napakahalaga, Daphne, ng kontribusyon ng ating pribadong sektor. Sa TESDA po, marami pong mga industry board, meron din pong mga kinatawan ang mga employers at mga manggagawa para ipakita po talaga ang kahalagaan ng kolaborasyon, pagbibigay po ng pagsasaalang-alang ng mga inputs ng ating mga constituencies, ng mga ating partners towards the improvement and betterment, not just quality of education, but the quality of life of every Filipino in our country.
Thank you, Secretary. Ang daming programa talaga to address.
Yes, madami na. Nalulula na nga yung mga kasamahan ko. Parang sinasabi ko sa kanila, dapat tuloy-tuloy tayo na palakasin pa yung ating ginagawang trabaho para talagang maisulong natin yung mga programa ng pamahalaan at matupad natin yung pangarap ng Pangulo. Unang-una, yung kanyang sinasabi na dapat ang poverty reduction, ang antas ng kahirapan, mapababa single digit. Medyo nagpupunta na tayo doon, Daphne, nakikita natin sa statistics. Ikalawa, yung inclusive growth. Walang maiwan. Lahat ng mga ating mga kasamahan ay magkaroon ng pagkakataon sa biyaya ng pagbabago at improvement, pag-unlad. And thirdly, itong medyo napakalapit sa puso ng Department of Labor and Employment, makalikha ng mas disente, de kalidad na trabaho para sa atin pong mga kababayan.
Wow. Still on labor, but this time, we switch a little topic, but very important because this part, President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. received a standing ovation and overwhelming applause when he tackled the POGO operations in the country in the third SONA. He also cited plans for Filipino POGO workers, saying, "The DOLE, in coordination with our economic managers, shall use the time between now and then to find new jobs for our countrymen who will be displaced." Secretary Laguesma, what are the plans to ensure that these workers will continue to have decent jobs?
Daphne, siguro brief backgrounder lang. Nung nakaraang taon, medyo naging napakainit itong usapin, may kinalaman sa POGO. At dahil diyan, ang PAGCOR, nagkaroon sila din ng mga reforma. Yung POGO, nag-rebrand sila, naging IGLs. No? So nagkaroon sila ng transition. At in the meantime, ang DOLE, humingi po din kami ng mga ng listahan para naman mapaghandaan namin yung transition period na sinasabi. Ang Department of Labor and Employment po, ang kauna-unahan sa aming plano, yung profiling ng mga manggagawa na pwedeng maapektuhan. At magagawa po namin ito o ginagawa namin ito sa pangkasalukuyan sa pamamagitan ng pakikipag-ugnayan, interaction with the employers, yung mga IGLs na sinasabi. Ano po ang aming layunin? Humihingi po kami sa kanila ng listahan ng mga manggagawa nila na direktang nakikinabang doon sa operation nila. Nang sa ganon, makita po namin yung ano ba yung aming pinaghahandaan ng mga programa ng DOLE. Sa profiling po, kasama po siyempre yung kasanayan nila, trabaho nilang pangkasalukuyan, anong kanilang sweldo, anong preference at anong pwedeng intervention. Kasi ang intervention at plano ng Department of Labor and Employment ay pwede bang sabihin natin, una, employment facilitation, referral sa mga trabaho na existing at tinitignan yung kanilang skills o kasanayan. Kung may kakulangan, papasok yung isa pang programa, upskilling, retraining, at saka siguro pagbibigay ng guidance kung paano makakakuha. Secondly, meron din pong programa ang Department of Labor and Employment, may kinalaman sa livelihood. Yung ayaw nang magtrabaho, pwede ba nang tulungan magkaroon ng negosyo. At ang Department of Labor and Employment, bahagi ng kanyang plano, magsasagawa po ng mga jobs fair, no? Focus doon sa mga available na trabaho at tignan kung paano imamatch ang ating mga pwedeng maapektuhan ng closure ng banning ng POGO. Meron na po kaming mga initial na mga informasyon, lalo na po sa bahagi ng National Capital Region, Department of Labor and Employment, dahil ang majority po ng mga POGO na naging IGL ay naririto sa region, sa NCR. Tapos po meron na rin kaming initial profiling sa Region 4A, Laguna at Cavite, at meron na rin po sa Central Luzon. So sa pagpaplano po, importante yung bilang ng mga manggagawa. Parang sa ganon, maiswak namin yung mga dapat na intervention. Hindi lamang para sa mga workers na affected, pati sa mga dependents na mga affected na workers. Yung mga nabanggit kong programa may kinalaman sa pag-aaral, yun ang gusto naming ilinya para matulungan sila. At meron pang isang aspeto na aming tinitignan dito sa aming mga plano, paano po namin sila matutulungan, may kinalaman naman sa posibleng mga benepisyo nila na dapat maipagkaloob ng kanilang employer at kung sila po ay magkwa-qualify, pati rin po yung possibility na magkaroon po ng unemployment insurance sa bahagi po ng SSS.
Okay. Thank you, Secretary Laguesma. Right now, let's dive deep into the next topic about our modern heroes, the Filipino migrant workers. Among them are our seafarers. And with this, the President mentioned, through vital partnerships with like-minded states, we have been able to promote our mutual interests, resulting not only in investments here in our strengthened national security, but also in quality jobs for nationals seeking foreign employment. Through intense Philippine lobbying, the UN has adopted the resolution on promoting and protecting the enjoyment of human rights of seafarers, which will ensure their safe and decent living and working conditions at sea, a human rights imperative. This is for Secretary Kakdak. Could you please share with us updates on bilateral labor agreements that you have been pursuing to protect OFW rights?
Yes, good morning to all. We have made strides, especially during the administration of the president, in terms of bilateral labor relations. If we will recall, since his very first State of the Nation address, he had emphasized at least one major bilateral labor relationship that we hold dearly for the last 5 decades, and that's with Saudi Arabia, the main, should I say, the host country having the most number of OFWs. And since then, we've embarked on a series of discussions, agreements with Saudi Arabia in terms of improving the standards of protection for OFWs in Saudi Arabia, with the opening or the reopening of the domestic worker market especially. The standard contract had been reviewed to provide stronger protection for domestic workers in terms of providing safer standards, safer living conditions and working conditions at home where in their employer households. We've also looked into live-out arrangements for domestic workers where they would be hired by institutions and would be deployed either to institutions or employer households and would not have to stay in their respective employer households. Also, there have been proper standards with respect to insurance coverage, which includes health insurance coverage and wage protection. Also, the matter on a whitelisting or blacklisting framework, as it is called, for recruitment agencies, both here and abroad in Saudi, in terms of making sure that only recruitment intermediaries or entities with good track records, with clean track records, will be able to recruit and deploy our domestic workers. And of course, aside from Saudi Arabia, at least in the 3 other major Middle East destinations of our OFWs, we have also definitely opened the lines of bilateral labor relations and should I say, amicable and cordial discussions for the better protection of OFWs. In the United Arab Emirates, we just concluded our recent joint committee meeting between the Philippines and the UAE with the DFA, with the DMW for the Philippine side in discussing stronger means of protection or methods of protection for our OFWs. Among topics discussed, for instance, would be the matter on ensuring that all workers in UAE would be properly documented and not come in as tourists. And also, with respect to so-called third country hiring, we raised the matter on enhancing protection for OFWs who come from other countries and come in the UAE, especially as domestic workers with possibly less protection. In Kuwait, we had resumed deployment of OFWs with the proper standards of protection. For skilled workers, the market had been reopened. The deployment of OFWs had been reopened. We made the corresponding issuances. And might I say that in both, in Kuwait, the matter on resumption of deployment was brought on by the cordial discussion between the President and the then Royal Crown Prince, who is now the Emir, back in October 2023 in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, in the sidelines of the ASEAN GCC summit. So with respect to domestic workers for Kuwait, we had carefully laid the standard with respect to the qualification, with respect to only OFWs with overseas employment experience should be able to work in Kuwait. As we know, skill sets and experience would be the highest form of protection, aside from laws and services that we provide. And this being the case, the qualification of overseas job experience as a domestic worker abroad prior to working in Kuwait as a domestic worker indeed ensures that first important level of protection for our domestic workers entering Kuwait. And aside from this, we are also putting in place the whitelisting and blacklisting frame for recruiters both here and in Kuwait, as I mentioned, applying it as well to Kuwait. There is also wage protection in Kuwait, which means that bank accounts will be, or there will be bank accounts open for our domestic workers, which means it's now safer, or at least timely and in the right amount, should I say, that the wages of our domestic workers will be provided through these bank accounts. And of course, there will also be welfare officers. Aside from government, DMW welfare officers, OWA welfare officers, there will also be private sector officers monitoring the situation of our domestic workers on the ground. So that's Kuwait. For Qatar, we're scheduled to have a joint committee meeting. We had cordial bilateral discussions at the sidelines of the Abu Dhabi dialogue with USEC Kaunan last February. And we had agreed on a joint committee meeting that is forthcoming in the first week of August. And then, of course, speaking of other possible bilateral partners, we definitely had opened the avenues in terms of safe, ethical labor mobility discussions with Central and Eastern European countries who have opened their respective job markets as well for Filipinos. So We have bilateral discussions and agreements with Austria, and of course the presidential visit to Germany, to Hungary, to the Czech Republic, and also open the avenues of discussion that are currently ongoing with respect to safe, ethical labor mobility of OFWs there. And in Hungary, we've seen unprecedented deployment of OFWs to Hungary, legitimate deployment, I should say, and therefore we had also opened the lines of communication with Hungary and deepened bilateral labor relations. The foreign minister, for instance, had just come over to the Philippines, and we had cordial discussions as well. Aside from the president and the Secretary of Foreign Affairs, we too had cordial discussions with the Hungarian foreign minister. For seafarers, let me just say the president highlighted, of course, the UN resolution on protection of seafarers at the UN Human Rights Council, and we're very, very thankful, of course, to the United Nations, and the DFA spearheaded the effort with DMW support. As we all know, this comes in timely with the situation in the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden, where we had been monitoring since the attacks began last November 2023, the plight of our seafarers in terms of their protection from armed attacks. And we have had a series of issuances designating that area as a warlike zone, and therefore directing ship owners to divert their voyages from those routes, and at the same time monitoring those who still choose to divert or to navigate through the Red Sea and Gulf of Aden. And we had assisted the seafarers and their families. This is the foremost directive of the president, to also look after the families of distressed seafarers. And so we had been looking after the seafarers in terms of honoring their right to refuse sailing. We had facilitated this long-standing right of OFWs and we of seafarers. And so we had also facilitated around 110 or so seafarers had already exercised the right to refuse sailing. However, for those who had consented, as I mentioned, we monitor their situation. We repatriate those who need to be repatriated, the seafarers who are also affected by the situation in the Middle East. And again, hand-holding their families through the process and providing the necessary assistance through the Action Fund, which the President had also directed for us to tap in order to help our seafarers.
Thank you, Secretary Kaktak, for highlighting the importance and the relevance of your hard work in with bilateral relations in protecting the rights of our OFWs, especially in times of emergencies and threats. Now, still on our migrant workers, our Chief Executive further expressed, hanggang sa kanilang pag-uwi, buong puso pa rin ang ating pagtanggap at paglingap. Ang mga nagbabalik na OFWs kasama ang kanilang pamilya ay sinusuportahan nating mabuti upang maging maayos ang kanilang bagong simula dito sa bansa para makakuha ng magandang trabaho o di kaya'y makapagtayo ng negosyo. The President also mentioned and thanked the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia for their help in ensuring that the displaced OFWs would be paid their claims. Could you please give us any more updates on the resolution again of these claims?
Yes, first and foremost, the President indeed highlighted the emergency assistance that we had provided to OFWs over the last year. And he named a number of countries in the process. And I must say that I could name at least the two countries mentioned by the President, which were the foremost global crises the world faced in the last year. I would say one would be the civil war in Sudan, and then the Israel-Hamas war. Civil war in Sudan sometime May, June. And the civil war and the Israel-Hamas conflict in October, and in both cases, the DMW had been directed to provide assistance together with the DFA, and we had repatriated around 800 OFWs from Sudan who were caught in the strife. And in Israel, the count is around 1,000 whom we have repatriated from Israel, from Lebanon, from the West Bank, and from Gaza, again, together with the DFA. And I must say, the assistance mentioned by the President is unprecedented. I've been in overseas employment for quite a while, but with respect to the assistance packages that the President had directed, a whole-of-government approach, we have been giving at least 100,000 pesos for the returnees from these emergency situations from the MWO alone. And then, of course, when we are assembled together in the Salubong at the airport, there's Secretary Darbosa, who exercises his authority as Secretary of Health to board the plane, first and foremost. That's in the law. And I was so proud to see this, no less than the Secretary of Health do that. My first time to see the Secretary of Health actually board the plane and exercise his authority under quarantine laws and provide the necessary medical and psychosocial assistance to OFWs from these situations of strife and conflict and those in distress as well. Secretary Rex Gatchalian also there with respect to providing the necessary social welfare assistance, the kits, social workers who provide assistance as we receive the distressed workers. DG Teng Mangodadatu and his team from TESDA also providing the I call them sort of blank check vouchers, in the sense that the vouchers are blank, and the returnee will choose the course in which he or she will take, and then the institution even. So this assistance provided by CHED. Sec Benny Laguesma, also we're working with Sec Benny in terms of the facilitation of their reintegration through local employment, through the pesos. And we have conducted various job fairs over the last 12 months along these lines. So the assistance program continues. Hopefully there won't be any more situations of strife or disaster or conflict abroad, where of course we're praying hard that won't happen. But if it does happen, then we stand ready. And the President mentioned also situations of disasters or natural calamities in other countries. And the effort actually doesn't begin with the reception, as mentioned by the President, of the returnees, but really begins at the point of monitoring, preparation for crisis management in terms of crisis plan implementation, and monitoring their situation on the ground. So in Israel, for instance, at the height of the conflict last October, November, we had the DFA and our DMW teams doing the rounds, checking the shelters and the places where the OFWs who had been moved to safer ground were, and providing the necessary assistance. Some of them were in hospital, so we visited them in hospital as well. With respect to the claims, Saudi claims, I wanted to mention this when I mentioned Saudi Arabia at the outset, but I reserve this point for the pronouncement by the President in his SONA that indeed Saudi Arabia, we're so thankful that the Saudi Arabia is proceeding with the releases of the claims. I had just come from Saudi. I was directed by the President to once again follow up the releases of the claims, and I talked to my counterpart, the Minister of Human Resources and Social Development there, and we had been assured once again that the releases will be forthcoming. 1.95 billion pesos have been released by the Saudi side so far, benefiting 2,500 workers. And we've also been told, Yusek Bernard Olalia also led the technical team as I was there. We've also been told that there will be at least around 1,800 more forthcoming in the next few weeks. We're hoping that it will come in August, and so the number will go up to around 4,300, and thereafter there will be another release of around 2,200 in the coming months. And of course, our target by the end of the year is substantially most of the 10,000 beneficiaries have been given their benefits and claims. So we continue to hope and work with the Saudi side. I, of course, will make another visit in the course of the year to Saudi Arabia to visit my counterpart. The talks were cordial, by the way, with my counterpart in Saudi Arabia. While I'm at it, I might as well mention also that we discussed the forthcoming review of two major bilateral agreements, labor agreements we have in Saudi Arabia. One is the 2013 Domestic Worker Agreement, and the other is the 2017 General Labor Agreement. So we both agreed, my counterpart and I, that it's time to review in the context of the many other factors that affect domestic workers and workers OFWs in general in this day and age. And the president definitely has directed us to add on, to highlight, to modify or emphasize greater protection for our OFWs in Saudi Arabia. The matter on strengthening also our migrant workers' offices was a topic of discussion when I met the labor minister there. And we both agreed. We're so thankful to the labor minister because he supports our latest initiative to strengthen, to improve our presence in Saudi Arabia so that we could help more OFWs. I won't just express the details at this stage. I think there will be an appropriate moment, time with the DFA and our counterparts in Saudi to announce the developments along these lines. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Secretary. There certainly are a lot of moving parts in your department, considering the geopolitical issues, emergencies, and threats. But that's a lot of work. And of course, you mentioned the unprecedented support of a president, President Marcos, in the assistance and the level of support that the national government is giving. Thank you. And now let's move on to TESDA. During his SONA, President Marcos Jr. stated, "Statistics do not lie. 8 out of 10 graduates of TVET ultimately land decent jobs. With its high employment rate, TVET will definitely be instrumental in capacitating our people and in maintaining our employment rate at consistently high levels." Cognizant of this potential, the DepEd, CHED, DOLE, and TESDA have joined forces to incorporate TVET in the senior high school curriculum to further boost the employability of our students. DDG Urdaneta, does the TESDA have initiatives to partner with industries to develop training courses that address their needs, especially in highly technical areas?
Yes, good morning, Daphne. Thank you for this opportunity for us to be able to dwell deeper on the pronouncements of the President in the State of the Nation address. Let me put it this way. Basically, why we are very proud of the employment rate is because of our partnership with the industry. It starts with sitting down with the industry on developing on trying to identify actually the skills that are needed by a sector or by an industry, and thereafter developing those competency standards as well as curriculum with the industry, and also coming up with assessment packages, which means to say that they do with us the test and certification process. So basically, the partnership has been there since our NMYC days, National Manpower and Youth Council. It has been fortified because of the mandate of TESDA that we have to create industry boards, and of course, our attachment to the Department of Labor and Department of Labor and Employment, and we were also an attached agency before of the Department of Trade and Industry. That's why it fortified really the elements and the systems and the processes of really identifying programs with the industry. What we're doing now is that we are doing area-based, demand-driven. So in each of the specific area, whatever is demanded by the industry, doon lang kami talaga nag-o-offer ng mga programs because our secretary believes, Secretary Teng Mangundadato, that sayang lang yung pera ng gobyerno kung gumagawa tayo ng mga programa na hindi naman kailangan ng industriya at hindi kailangan ng area. So what he was trying to really do is to work make operationalize the concept of area-based demand-driven. Napakalaki din pong tulong ang binibigay sa amin ng industriya, lalo na ngayon that they are very well um, consolidated in one group, yung PISAC. Ang laki din ng tulong ng mga sectoral meetings ng presidente para talagang magkaroon ng focus ang bawat ahensya. So that yung mga areas na yon, yung mga meetings na yon ng mga with the industry, talagang now we can really tell them what challenges have we encountered and ano naman po ang tingin nila sa TESDA. So with this, we are proud to say that we have done at least yung dating mismatch na sinasabi, nearer na kami doon sa katotohanan and reality na talagang ang mga kailangan ng industriya ang dapat naming maibigay. Yun namang we had worked together. Yes, we are so happy and proud that at last we have worked together in one project, and this is the embedment of Tibet in senior high school. When we say embedment, ito po yung pag-integrate ng Tibet skills. Pero nais ko lang po din na i-explain na hindi po, kasi pag sinabing Tibet, yun yung sinasabi yung mga skills on carpentry, skills on cooking, hindi po ito yung ganito. Kasi medyo, of course, nag-evolve na po ang Tibet. Hindi na ito yung Tibet na alam natin before. Ang mga ino-offer namin ang doon sa embedment with DepEd ay yung tungkol po sa web development, sa visual graphics design, events management, yung mga Java programming, agro-entrepreneurship, yung iba't ibang klase ng TVET. Ito po yung mga elevated na or higher level qualifications na sinasabi ng ating Pangulo sa SONA niya. So what we do right now is to come up with the curriculum with DepEd and CHED. Umupo po kami, ginagawa po namin yung mga curriculum kung paano po makontextualize. Ibig sabihin po, we will not disturb the R's, we will not disturb the processes of and the curriculum of DepEd. We will just contextualize po. Ibig sabihin, kumbaga, meron silang accounting and business management, yung ABM na track. So yung bookkeeping po namin at training regulation, i-embed po sa mga subjects nila na related. So hindi po magkakaroon ng malaking disturbo sa oras o malaking disturbo po sa curriculum ng DepEd. So ang kailangan lang po namin talaga is matrain yung mga teachers on how to contextualize TVET skills into the subjects. So ngayon po, gagawin na namin yan kasi natapos na nilang gawin ang mga curriculum. So by next week po, magta-train na kami ng mga teachers, mga cadre of trainers, so that we could have this multiplied in the different areas. Kasi ipapilot pa po namin to bago namin i-full blast nationwide for us to be able to gather more lessons and experiences para hindi po masabi na gumawa na naman kayo ng kung ano-ano tapos hindi naman pala pwede o hindi ano. So we're trying to do a pilot test next month or September para po ma-pilot namin yung contextualized na embedment. This, together with DOLE kasi, bakit kasama namin ang DOLE? Ang DOLE naman po, ang hiniling po namin sa DOLE is yung ma-identify nila yung key employment generators ng bawat area. Kasi ganun din po ang mangyayari. Kung ano-ano lang na naman ang ibibigay natin mga subjects na hindi naman kailangan ng area na yon. Parang gusto pa natin na pumunta pa kung saan malalayong lugar ang mga bata or learners para lang po sila magkaroon ng trabaho when in fact they are needed sa mga areas nila at mga communities nila para hindi na rin po makongest yung mga prime cities or even Metro Manila for that matter. So we needed also the participation of the industry on this particular endeavor because what we really wanted is for us to have an authentic learning environment, which means to say that pag po nakatapos sila ng senior high school, they will be able to really know what work environment is. So we need the participation of the industry on this matter so that we would be able to attach them on immersion. Para gawin pong laboratories also yung mga areas ng company so that we would be able to really provide a deeper na talagang appreciation of these particular learners para po kaya na nila na talaga when they graduate senior high school, ibig sabihin, employable na po sila, they are ready for the world of work, and kung gusto nilang magtrabaho muna, magtatrabaho muna, and then after that, yung na naman pong Philippine Credit Transfer System if they want to go to college, so that makikredit naman po yung lahat na natutunan nila when they go to college. So that's basically the Philippine Qualifications Framework now being operationalized. Of course, it's being shared by the DepEd Secretary. So gusto po namin na maging seamless na yung education system, which means to say, even trifocalized kami, nag-uusap-usap kami, at lahat po ng pwede naming maitulong sa isa't isa, pwede naming gawin together, then we will be able to really provide a very robust now framework para po matulong talaga sa bawat individual at makatulong talaga sa workforce natin. So that's basically it, and we would like, in behalf of Secretary Teng Mangundadato, we would like to thank DOLE, we would like to thank DepEd, SHED, and of course the industry sector for helping us on this particular endeavor. And the President himself, he said that at one point, he said, mahirap ito, pero hindi imposible, and we have to do it. And with that, yun po yung kailangan pa namin ng madaming tulong at suporta, and we will be validating and vetting this with the major stakeholders in the education environment so that they would be able to have their comments and recommendations in order to enhance and intensify the concept. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you, Deputy Director General Urdaneta. You know, it's been great to see the various agencies here and how they work together and to create a seamless experience from education to skills development to employment, whether here or abroad. Kitang-kita naman sa leadership na talagang well-coordinated and the whole of government and even whole of society approach with the support, of course, of the private sector. And now we have some time for some questions. We have some media here. Let me call on Zen Hernandez of ABS-CBN. This, I believe, is for Dole.
Hello, good morning everyone. I'm Zen Hernandez, ABS-CBN. Secretary Laguesma, may we ask about the POGO ban? So, can you just confirm how many workers we expect to be displaced? Because there were initial figures like around 40,000, if you can confirm this. And also, do we have an idea as to what are the possible job prospects for the displaced workers are? Do we have talks with certain sectors, perhaps the BPOs or IT who are willing to take them in?
Thank you. As far as DOLE is concerned, the number is actually moving. No? When I say moving, we are looking at the list being provided by the IGLs who are actually cooperating with the Department of Labor and Employment. Initially, so far as NCR is concerned, there is an estimate of more or less 15,000 workers affecting or representing submissions made by 34 IGLs. Hindi lang naman yun ang tinitignan ng Department of Labor and Employment kasi other than the IGLs, merong authorized provider na nagre-render din ng services sa IGL and the so-called special BPOs. No? As far as Region 4A is concerned, may initial na report na rin of the number, and this actually covers the Laguna and the Cavite area, more or less 5,000 workers. No? So gumagalaw yung number, and we continue to more or less coordinate also with PAGCOR because the initial list was provided to us. There was a mention of a number of 79 operating. And so if you minus the 34, medyo marami pa yung hindi nagsasubmit, no, sa amin. And we hope that in the next coming days, list will be provided with, to the DOLE so that we can sit down with our colleagues in the Department of Labor and Employment, and also, based on the directive of the President, in coordination with the economic managers para matignan anong klase ang kanilang intervention. So, ang profiling na ginagawa ng DOLE as of now is intended to really look at ano ang kasalukuyang trabaho ng mga manggagawa sa IGLs, ano ang level ng kanilang sweldo, tinitignan din namin. At tinitignan din namin ang preference nila, ano bang klase ang pwede naming may pagkaloob na trabaho. Kasi nung tinignan ng DOLE NCR, yung listahan ng mga manggagawa na ipinagkaloob ng mga kumpanya, malaking bahagi doon ay nandoon sa mga encoders. Mga encoders na ibig sabihin, pwede talagang i-link up sa ating IT, BPO management sector. And fortunately, the Department of Labor and Employment has a very strong partnership with the IT Business Association of the Philippines, no, headed by Mr. Jack Madrid. We do regular consultation and dialogue with them. And they are actually providing us information, ano ang pwede na may pagkaloob sa ating mga pwedeng ma-displace. Hindi lang naman ito ginagawa ng DOLE dahil sa POGO. Ginagawa namin ito in totality dahil ang services of the Department of Labor and Employment are actually open, should be afforded or given to not simply sa formal workers but also sa informal workers. And that is our mandate. So, tinitignan namin yung profiling to help us na makapaggawa talaga ng konkretong plan of action. Gaano ba karami yan, anong pwedeng ipagkaloob. And we are also doing this in collaboration or coordination with the respective employers. So, yan yung stage of things. No? And we are awaiting reports coming from other regions na maaring mayroong operation din ng POGO. In Region 3, as far as the Region 3 is concerned, which is Central Luzon, ang sabi ang report ng Regional Director dyan ay isa na lamang ang IGL. No? Pero may mga related siguro na mga trabaho o negosyo na dapat ay i-consider din namin dun sa pagbabalangkas namin ng plan of action.
Can I ask just a follow-up? So since the BPO, the IT sector is a potential sector that can absorb these workers, sir, do we know how many are the vacant positions now in that sector? And if we have a timeline for the profiling and all that process, because the President said that the POGO ban is effective immediately. That's it.
Yung timeline namin would also probably have to consider yung submission. No? If they submit already, siguro in a matter of 1 week, 2 weeks, we'll be able to have a complete profile. No? But again, let me emphasize, depende yan dun sa submission, kaya nakatutok yung ating mga regional implementors para kunin yung listahan. And meron din kaming pakikipagpulong sa PAGCOR para ma-validate namin yung listahan na pinagkaloob nila sa amin, and so that we can also more or less do verification inspection. As you are aware, the Department of Labor and Employment has a visitorial power. Yung mga nako-cover ng Department of Labor and Employment, siyempre yung mga legitimate at saka on record, no? Merong mga data ang Department of Labor and Employment. Outside of that, yung mga underground, medyo mahirap. Kaya it is actually probably providential, fortunate that last Saturday, there was a coordination meeting initiated by the Department of Interior and Local Government para magtulong-tulong yung mga ahensya at bahagi ang DOLE dahil ang bottom line lagi merong naapektuhan na manggagawa. And just to emphasize, DOLE will always be seriously concerned kahit isang trabaho lang ang nawawala dahil other than job creation, we also would like to see and emphasize job preservation. Dapat na preserve ang trabaho. But having said that, kung mayroong mga dislocation, may mga programa naman ng Department of Labor and Employment in place to help, no? Either temporarily sa pamamagitan ng aming programa na ang pangalan ay Tupad. Pwede rin naman kami sa livelihood, ay yung job fair na nabanggit ko kanina, which we will be doing specifically for this purpose, and we will be needing the support ng sectors, ang private sector, hindi lang naman sa IT, no? Kasi meron ding mga manggagawa dun sa na maapektuhan, ang trabaho nila administrative, HR, at meron din yung mga utilities and maintenance. So, tinitignan namin yung kabuuan para plano namin ng maayos yung aming gagawin na hakbangin para matulungan sila.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Let's bring it back to Secretary Angara on education. There is a question here. Secretary Angara with us? Oh, hi, sir. Okay, how would you tackle the challenge of increasing the proficiency of our students in problem solving and critical thinking, as these are some of the areas that they are not faring well in? Maybe in general, how will you address the state of Philippine education as it is?
In the short term, to possess these skills, we are injecting some periods in the everyday curriculum for reading to strengthen the foundations of literacy and numeracy, Daphne. But in the long term, we'll have to really institute also some reforms in how we teach. So we're inserting 30-minute reading periods in between classes to strengthen the reading and comprehension skills of our students. And we're supplementing current initiatives like Catch-up Fridays with a focus on science projects, because the coming 2025 PISA exam is going to deal with science. So we're also going to craft some PISA-type quizzes and examinations to give to our students periodically, because we need to monitor their progress to see if the interventions we are making an effect, and hopefully we also have data at a more granular level, meaning at a student level, where we can really monitor who is adapting well to the new learning programs. And as the President said, the National Recovery Program must continue.
Sounds good. Very exciting time. We look forward to seeing all those reforms and support you, sir. Now let me call on another member of the media from Al Jazeera. We have Mr. Barnaby Lo.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Barnaby Lo. I'm from Al Jazeera. My questions are for Secretary Hans, actually, and Secretary Leguesma. If you can also chime in. You're welcome to chime in. So my questions are in light of the Seoul city government's recruitment of 100 Filipino domestic workers, which I believe is ending on August 6th and launching in September. Before this recruitment program, the Philippines has been sending seasonal farmer workers to South Korea, and there have been complaints of abuse and exploitation. So I just wanted to get an update on investigations on these complaints. So one, the accountability, and number two, how the government plans to prevent these abuses and exploitations, given that we are sending more workers to South Korea.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for the question, Barnaby. You're right. We have been deploying workers to South Korea. Let me start with the standing employment permit system. It's around a 20-year program. It's a government-to-government hiring program for factory workers. And we have should I say, another sector that we had identified under the EPS employment permit system program, and that is the program on caregivers. it's not domestic workers, but caregivers. So we are raised to commence with the pilot program in terms of deployment. We've gone through the hiring stage, and the caregivers had been selected, and there will be 100 of them forthcoming in terms of deployment. It's all in the pilot stage. The contracts were carefully discussed with the Korean Ministry of Labor. They are above standard both under Philippine and Korean law, especially with respect to labor standards and minimum wages and other aspects of Korean labor standards law. So once again, we're braced to deploy. In the coming weeks. There will be an appropriate announcement along these lines. They are caregivers and not domestic workers. With respect to seasonal workers, last year, as you know, we had, or early this year, let me restate that. Late last year, we had embarked on discussions with the Korean side in joint meetings with respect to the matter on abuses of seasonal workers through LGU to LGU programs, hiring programs, which we find to be highly irregular from the Philippine standpoint because they don't go through the DMW. It's an arrangement between a Philippine LGU and a Korean LGU, and they agreed to deploy seasonal farm workers in that regard. So we put a stop to that because it's plainly illegal. We know that various labor complaints. We had around 60 labor complaints that had been addressed by the Korean authorities in terms of resolving the labor situation on the ground. Here in the Philippines, we filed cases of illegal recruitment against 58 individuals. 49 of them are Filipinos and 9 are Korean nationals. And the cases for illegal recruitment are still pending with the Department of Justice. I looked at the status matrix and noticed that many of the cases have been forwarded to the office of the respective provincial prosecutors for perhaps finalization of the DOJ finding. So there are cases that are pending with respect to illegal recruitment. But all told, since we came in, we had a series of guidelines issued early this year. Since we came in and imposed a process whereby everybody goes through the DMW, seasonal workers, we have deployed around 5,000, approved the deployment of 5,000 workers who went through the DMW, which essentially means we reviewed their contracts, we ensured that there are insurance arrangements, medical insurance, and other types of insurance arrangements for the workers, and also that they are OWA members. We're thankful to Admin Arnel, of course, our dasher for this, which means everybody is an OWA member, whereas in the past, the contracts have not been reviewed. We don't know for sure whether the standards are up to Korean law and Philippine law, and they were not OWA members. But now everybody is on board in terms of the necessary standards of protection that we laid. Also, there are proper education briefings, pre-departure education briefings that we now conduct under our auspices. And also, we monitor their situation on the ground. So around 5,000 of them have been deployed for the last 6 months or so. And we continue to monitor their situation on the grounds. Thus far, due to our monitoring effort, we had not incurred at least major complaints as in the past. So I should say that it's so far so good insofar as this program is concerned. And I also need to add that there is an appropriate Department of Justice ruling, by the way, on the matter of the deployment with respect to seasonal worker arrangements However, the deployment should be under the auspices monitoring of the Department of Migrant Workers.
If I may just follow up, sorry. Labor rights organizations say that although the Department of Migrant Workers have already put these seasonal workers under, the auspices of the national government, some local governments, some brokers are still able to send seasonal workers to South Korea. Do you concur that this is still happening? Is this something that you're able to monitor?
Yeah, that goes to my point about the filing of illegal recruitment cases. So we've witnessed along these lines that we're working closely with the DOJ. We're thankful to Sec Remulla and his team of undersecretaries who've been working closely with the prosecutorial service, whom we've been closely working with. So we have filed cases of illegal recruitment, and we will not hesitate to file cases of illegal recruitment. You mentioned the brokers, so I need to highlight that point. One major reason why we stepped in is to stop the brokering system. The workers in the past have been charged with amounts from 30, 40, 50 up to 100,000 pesos. And they were required to pay for these amounts. When they incurred loans to pay for these amounts, they were required to pay for these loans in terms of salary deductions. This system had been curtailed, but having said that, Barnaby, we are still continually filing the appropriate cases with the DOJ, and we will not hesitate to do so if these brokering arrangements continue at the LGU level. Even some of them are LGU employees, actually, whom we have filed cases against.
Just one last quick question, just real quick. Is a bilateral agreement in the works?
Yes, we are discussing closely with the DFA. You're right. You mentioned the employment permit system. And employment permit system is a national to national, not LGU to LGU bilateral arrangement, government to government hiring arrangement. And we're seeking the same agreement on the seasonal farm workers with Korea. So we're currently in talks with the Korean government along these lines. The dynamic is EPS, factory workers, and caregivers also would be under the Ministry of Labor. Ang kausap dyan, Ministry of Labor. But with the seasonal farm workers, we're talking to a different ministry, Ministry of Justice. Now that's good in a sense that the legal protections are provided, right? However, we also want the Ministry of Labor to requesting at least the Korean government to bring in our labor colleagues, the labor ministry colleagues, so that we could also talk on the same footing as similar to the employment permit system agreement and arrangement.
Okay, thank you, Barnaby, and thank you to our friends in media for participating in the Post-SONA discussions. We are now down to the last part of our discussion as we listen to the final remarks of our panelists. Let's begin with Department of Education Secretary Sunny Angara.
Thank you, Daphne, to Sec Benny, Sec Hans, DDG Rose, and to all the media friends in attendance. Thank you for attending this and allowing us to expound on the President's remarks. I think the President's SONA was remarkable in the amount of detail it provided for a roadmap for education, and not only education under my department, but also education under TESDA, under CHED, and the need for us for these agencies to work together to provide genuine options for our young people. And of course, the President showed his concern for our teachers and for the education sector. And I think people in this sector are very excited with what the President said and looking forward to the reforms of the President. Thank you.
Thank you. A round of applause for Senator Angara. And now we have Department of Labor and Employment Secretary, Bienvenido Laguesma.
Thank you, Daphne. To my co-panelists, to our attendees in this Post-SONA forum, our friends from the media, co-workers in government, maraming mga taga-Department of Labor and Employment dito. They braved the rain and the flood So let me join Secretary Sani in thanking you for and the opportunity for this opportunity to be able to expound and probably respond to certain pressing concerns. I think we have to highlight that, let me also just say that we actually, other than the measures mentioned and steps taken to protect our workers, I think the overall goal of the present administration under President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. is to be able to really create more employment, quality employment, so that overseas employment will become merely an option, not the first choice. Yun po ang gustong makita ng ating Pangulo. At bagamat meron pong mga ginagawa para maipagtanggol, mapangalagaan ang kapakanan ng ating mga manggagawa, siguro po ang pinakamahalaga na pwedeng maipagkaloob sa kanila ay ang option, ang first choice na makapagtrabaho sa ating sariling bansa. And we also would like to probably give this assurance and commitment that the Department of Labor and Employment ay lagi pong bukas, tutulong kung meron mo pong mga pwedeng magawa at ang mga programa ay pwede pong maipagkaloob sa ating mga manggagawa, higit po yung mga nangangailangan. Lagi po kaming tatalima doon sa direktiba na dapat magtulong-tulong ang lahat ng mga departamento ng pamahalaan para nang sa ganun ma-maximize ang resources, maiukol ang resources na magkaroon ng impact sa pagpapataas ng kalagayan at antas ng pamumuhay ng ating mga kababayan. So, we look forward to interaction, lalo na sa ating constituency sa DOLE, ang ating mga employers organization, ang ating pong workers organization, in the hope that we can actually, in a sense, perfect, in close quote, a roadmap towards the realization of a bagong Pilipinas. Maraming salamat.
Thank you, Secretary Benny Laguesma. And now we have Department of Migrant Workers, Secretary Hans Leo Kakdak.
Well, thank you, Daphne, and to our fellow colleagues in the cabinet and colleagues in government and our guests in the venue. Well, yes, it was a SONA for the ages. 2 standing ovations and a lot of areas covered by the president. Actually, yung mga other areas not necessarily in the OFW field also affect OFW families, and so we're thankful for all the achievements and the accomplishments along the lines of the other sectors that were mentioned by the president: the economy, education, and health, and even local employment, as mentioned by Sec Benny and DG Rosana. But in the area of overseas employment, it's all about OFW protection. That is always a topic of discussion with respect to the president. He is always very mindful of the current state and condition of our OFWs, and especially also with respect to OFW families and children. And so along these lines, abangan po ninyo, magkakaroon tayo ng further development. We're working closely with the OWA and other relevant government agencies, even reaching out to Sexani and the DepEd for programs with respect to OFW children. Reintegration, everywhere we go, the president invites the Filipino community to come home and look and try our current economic situation in terms of endeavoring in business and employment in our country. So we will work harder and closer with other government agencies. There are projects in line. I just won't state them at this stage. There will be a proper announcement for the second half of the year, especially with respect to reintegration. We will have stronger migrant workers offices. We will have better facilities. The president, by the way, did mention the OFW lounge, and which was open in time in NAIA 3 and in NAIA 1, because that was around the same time that we had the outage, the power outage, and therefore we're able to accommodate the lounges. We're able to accommodate stranded OFWs. Admin Arnel Ignacio and myself were on the scene at the time last week. And of course, there will be better facilities, centers of excellence in terms of OFW migrant worker centers all around the world. And we will also strengthen our regional office presence. We're working closely in terms of beefing up our personnel and our workforce. Our OFW hospital will have a stronger workforce and better facilities and more services for OFWs in line. So all told, we will have if last Monday SONA was for the ages, then we will have an even better and brighter SONA for next year, definitely with the achievements, with the projects lined up by no less than the President in terms of better protection and reintegration of our OFW. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Secretary Hans Leo Kakdak. And now we will hear from the Technical Education and Skills Development Authority, Deputy Director General Rosana Urdaneta.
Thank you, Daphne, and my respect to the secretaries, Secretary Laguesma, Secretary Angara, and of course, Secretary Hans Kakdak. Maraming salamat po sa kapwa kawani ng ating pamahalaan, lalo na yung mga taga-TESDA nasa online po kasi binaha po yung opisina namin. On behalf of our Director General, Secretary Tech Mangudadatu, and the whole family of TESDA, we would like to express our gratitude to the Presidential Management Staff and the Presidential Communications Office for this particular discussion that we have for us to be able to really dwell on and expound on the explanations of the statement of the President in the SONA. We will continue and we will remain committed to continually enhance the quality of technical vocational education and training in the country, lalo na po sa ating mga kababayan na mga gustong magkaroon ng kasanayan para sa pangkabuhayan nila, at doon din po sa mga graduates ng college educations who would want to further their skills. Please take note that TESDA is now having a lot of training regulations that might suit your needs and sa requirement po ng industry. In all of this, TESDA would need the support of all our stakeholders, as well as the different government agencies, for us to be able to do our work, because TESDA alone cannot do it. So maraming salamat po at mabuhay tayong lahat.
Thank you, DDG Urdaneta. And thank you so much to our esteemed panelists for being here today and for sharing the details of your programs and for collaborating with each other to support education and workers' welfare, of course, under the leadership of our President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. para sa bagong Pilipinas. And now we will be taking a break, and we will be back later at 12 noon with the Infrastructure Development and Energy Security Cluster. Again, I'm Daphne Osenia Paez, and this has been the 2024 Post-SONA Discussions.